My name is Jennifer Zairi, and I am the Hebrew University alumna and member of the American Friends of Hebrew University Northeast Regional Board. But more than being a board member, I am the wife, the mother of two IDF veterans who pray every day that Idan, Alexander, and all the hostages are brought home now. Thank you for joining us today. On the day that family of 5 female hostages released their abduction video for the world to bear witness, let us never forget. No one could predict the horrors of October 7th, Shabbat HaShoah, the day our world changed. Grandparents, mothers, fathers, siblings, husbands, and wives, over 1,200 innocents were massacred on the deadliest day the Jews have faced since the Holocaust. And the terror did not stop there. Some 250 people were taken captive by Hamas and held hostage. More than half remain captive today. In the midst of this brutality, there are heroes like Dr. Kohav Elkayam Levy, who fought and continue to fight to bring justice and give a voice to the silenced victims and families whose lives were shattered by the October 7th atrocities. It is my honor to introduce her today. But before we jump into our program, I want to take a moment and remind you about Hebrew University's We Are One campaign. The We Are One fundraising campaign, established on October 9th, 2023, continues to support the Hebrew U community through the provision of mental health services for all who need help, including students and faculty members from Southern Israel and those returning to campus from active military duty. The campaign focuses on 3 initiatives: mental health and resistance, Arabs and Jews building a shared society, and partnership programs with Ofakim, a city located in the south of Israel that was devastated by the terror acts of October 7th. In addition, We Are One is funding unique scholarships for the 5,000 plus reservists who have begun rotating out of active duty to resume their studies. We will share a link to further inform in the chat. For further information on the chat. We are grateful for donors of any amount and thank you in advance for your generosity. Dr. Elkayam Levy is a Sophie Davis postdoctoral fellow at Hebrew University's Leonard Davis Institute program on gender affliction resolution. She teaches human rights law, international law, climate justice, and feminist theories. She is a distinguished academic, an activist, and the founder of the chair of the Dvorah Institute for Gender and Sustainability Studies. Following October 7th, Dr. Elkayam Levy established the Civil Commission to document and shed light on the crimes committed by Hamas on and after October 7th against women, children, and families. Dr. Elkayam Levy has received the prestigious Israel Prize for her solidarity efforts and has been named one of Israel's most promising young leaders. Notably, she served as the principal author on the National Report on Gender Mainstreaming in the Times of Emergencies, a document adopted by the Israeli government in 2022. If you have any questions, please write them in the question and answer box. We have set aside time to answer them after Dr. Elkayam Levy presents. Now, please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you all for joining us tonight. This is actually a difficult day. Just now we've seen the video released of the surveillance soldiers and how they were captured, and so it's a difficult night, and that reminds us all again and again the importance of bringing them back as soon as possible. So again, thank you for joining us. And I thought it would be, I wanted to say also that I don't feel like a hero. It's difficult for me when we are just doing what we need to do at this time in history. I feel like it's our moral obligation and moral responsibility to do whatever we can in whatever capacity that we have to release the hostages and to bring some justice to the victims. So with this, if it's okay, I'd like to start at least by sharing a bit about myself before the 7th of October. It helps me just to anchor myself before this everything happened on this terrible day. So just to present myself, I teach international law, human rights, feminist theories, and climate justice. These are my subject of expertise. I teach at Hebrew U and Reichman University. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm the Peace and Conflict Resolution Fellow of the Hebrew University, the Sophie Davis Fellow. What else? I wrote to myself that it's important for me to mention that we were fighting for gender equality before the 7th of October and are still fighting for gender equality. And I was very much involved in the protest movement here in Israel and actually represented the women's movement at the UN after the 7th of October. One more important thing to mention is that I drafted the national report on women during emergencies. It was post-COVID, and its important recommendation shedded light on the absence of women and women's representation in national security circles. I think we're seeing we've seen after the 7th of October, and even before that, the fact that women are not present in those most important circles deciding on war and peace. And this is the unfortunate situation that we must change. So with that, I'll start by saying that on the 7th of October, I was actually, like all of you, amazed, shocked to see the horrific scenes coming from the southern part of Israel. We didn't believe this is happening. I was actually with my father at the time. He was hospitalized from other reasons. Then we started gradually receiving reports, especially those in the human rights circles, started getting horrible reports on the situation, children calling their relatives to say that their parents were murdered, entire families saying that they are being burnt alive, young men and women contacting their friends and family members saying final goodbyes, or family members hearing their relatives in difficult situations. And this was the horrific reality of that morning. And of course, Hamas entered documenting and already releasing videos of what was happening. And I can say honestly that I didn't think that we're going to see an issue with the international community, specifically with international organization. We were certain, we knew that we are seeing crimes against humanity before our eyes, entire families taken barefoot into Gaza, people were dragged, bodies were dragged into Gaza. And again, honestly, I thought it would be very easy for international organizations to respond quickly to condemn the crimes. As international law scholar, I can tell you that it was just something that we thought would happen very quickly, condemning the crimes, offering help to us in Israel, expressing solidarity. And I want to mention something specific about this report, this response, just initially reporting the 7th of October, reporting that atrocities have happened here in Israel. And unfortunately, many UN organizations did not respond and did not even report, and until today are avoiding from mentioning the 7th of October. And for our surprise, the most surprising aspect of it was international UN organizations that are focused on women's rights and children's rights that were not able to condemn the crimes, express solidarity, offer help to us. And so we found ourselves on the second week of the war actually thinking that perhaps they're lacking information, perhaps they need more information. So I gathered a group of experts, and we decided to raise our voices, to tell them, to share with them all the information that we could, to give them credible information. We started collecting information regarding the crimes against women and children. I can tell you that today I feel a bit angry that so early we had to expose ourselves to those videos, to those images, in order to get them believe. And so I drafted I'll say a civil petition in the name of women wherever they are, to raise their voice regarding what happened here, to call upon UN institutions to bring back our hostages, to condemn the crimes against women and children. Thousands have joined this petition. The second thing was a petition in the name of civil organizations, civil society, women's rights organizations, more than 150 organizations here in Israel, human rights organizations, women's rights organizations have signed this petition. And the third document was a legal report that I personally drafted together with other experts, to which more than 180 law professors have joined, have signed it. Again, detailing the kind of crimes. The legal report was a brief report in which we already gave as much information as possible about what happened. And these three documents were sent to every UN agencies from my Hebrew University account, every UN agency, both personally and formally, to UN experts, to whoever we thought would be able to help and condemn the crimes, as I said, and offer help with the hostages. And so we waited. We sent it all of them, and we didn't get any response. It took weeks, as you know, in some cases. Most of them, I'll say, most of these organizations did not respond to this day. And it took a while. And then I was invited. I'll say that we started sending more and more communication. We saw that we're not getting any response. And then I was invited by the Building Alternative, the women's movement here in Israel, to represent the movement in front of the CEDAW committee. So I just want to explain, perhaps I don't see all of you, so it's a bit difficult. So I'll just say, most of you heard of UN Women, but there's actually a more important committee at the UN. The CEDAW committee, it's a committee on the elimination of discrimination against women. For us as legal scholars, this is the committee responsible for the generation of norms and representing universal values and developing women's rights. And again, I was invited to give a speech before this committee. And a day before my speech, two things happened. One thing, the first thing that happened is that people here in Israel heard that I'm going to speak there at the UN, and it was circulated in many WhatsApp groups and Facebook and social media. Kochav is going to speak at the UN, and people started sending me a lot of information, videos, images, short reports. Kochav, did you hear that this happened? Kochav, have you heard that this happened to this person? It was truly, truly devastating to be in this situation. I used to cry telling that. Now I'm okay. But it was really extremely difficult to get all these reports on what happened to women and children. And please tell them that this happened, and etc. And the second thing that happened before that speech is that the CEDAW committee decided to release a statement. They decided to release a statement explicitly referring to what happened, but again, as I said, not mentioning the 7th of October, not mentioning the hostages. And for us, seeing this statement, it was just a few weeks, it was October 29th, seeing a statement, not condemning the crimes, not expressing solidarity with what happened here, not calling upon other states and upon other UN entities to release the hostages to help us in this. The hostage taking is an ongoing crime against humanity. Not standing with us at this moment was a devastating realization. And so when I saw this, personally, I didn't think I would be able to give that speech. It was extremely difficult. Of course, that was the first time that we shared on an international platform everything that we could about the crimes that happened to to women and children, the gender-based crimes, and I called them. I told them that their silence is deafening, that the fact that we are seeing the same denial mechanism being adopted. Usually sexual abuse victims experience denial mechanism, but now we're experiencing these denial mechanism collectively. They are inflicting on us these mechanisms as a people, as women, as Israeli women. And I asked them, is there international law for Israeli women? Is it going to protect us? Are you going to be with us at this difficult moment in our history? And I can tell you that one of the haunting questions that kept repeating in my mind was, are we even human? The fact that they were not able to even express empathy with us. And those are feminist scholars that should have stand with us unequivocally. So that was a difficult realization. And I'm telling you all that. And now other things have happened, but the important thing that happened after that is that I gathered the group of experts, and I told them, listen, we must stop trying to communicate with those organizations. It was kind of sad at that time already that we kept sending them communications, and I said, we have a historical mission. We have to stop everything and start documenting and keeping everything ourselves. We have to establish an archive under the most compelling international standards, collecting testimonies, collecting reports, we should just to start preserve all the information, preserve the historical record. And that night, one of my colleagues, she called me and she told me, Kochav, you say that we have to establish an archive. You say that we have to document everything, but what are we? And then that day we decided on the establishment of the Civil Commission on Hamas's crimes against women and children. And now I'll explain more. We added the aspect of families that we're documenting, crimes against families, and I'll explain more in a moment. And so this archive is now led by the former deputy head of the Yad Vashem archive, Advocate Elinor Createro, an amazing expert in archive building. We are doing everything in our power since then to collect information, to collect videos, to collect images, to gather as much information as possible on what happened. First of all, as I said, for historic purposes, we have partnered also with the National Library that are helping us, and with other projects as well, in ways that will enable researchers, investigators, prosecutors to access this information and to understand, to get an in-depth understanding of these crimes, of what happened there. I can tell you many of the videos are videos that Hamas documented, that, as I said, themselves, but also a lot of materials that people documented as well, individuals that went there, first responders that went there, and other materials that have circulated since. Another interesting thing that I wrote to myself to share with you is that since the UN was not recognizing what happened, we found ourselves meeting with leaders all around the world that have expressed moral clarity. I will give one example. I've been to the White House. I've met with the senior staff of President Biden on gender equality, briefed them on what happened, and I'm briefing other officials since at the White House and generally in the administration, and in other countries, in France, in Canada. Every week, we're meeting leaders all around the world who want to understand better, want to help. So I do want to say that we have moral allies, and that we have people that express this moral clarity and want to help in this endeavor, and for different reasons. I want to mention, for example, we visited France, and I've met with a French minister for gender equality. She was amazing. Aside from the fact that the White House and Canada and France, right after this meeting, released a statement condemning Hamas for these crimes, specifically recognizing what happened, standing with us. at this moment, also promising to fight to release the hostages. Aside from that, some of them took brave actions. And I started mentioning the French minister. Her name is Aurore Abargé. Aurore, after our meeting, and we've met with a lot of inspiring leaders in France, feminist leaders in France. She decided around a week after our meeting, to release a decision not to fund human rights organizations who are denying the 7th of October and women's rights who are deciding to deny the 7th of October in any way. So she immediately took action. We are working with colleagues around the world to find ways to compensate the victims, to bring some justice, future justice. And it's a big question. Probably some of you will ask, what is justice? How does justice look like? How do the proceedings will look like in the future? So these are the kinds of advocacy work that we're doing, and the archival work, the documentation work. One thing that I also wanted to share with you, and I started earlier, is that actually, probably many of you know Professor Erwin Kotler from Canada. He was the former Minister of Justice in Canada. He's a huge scholar and a human rights activist, and I feel privileged to have met him and working with him now. And I shared with Professor Kotler in one of our meetings that actually the most difficult videos that we have in our archive are those of families. Are those of families in their last moments, when the terrorists document themselves entering the house, killing the parents, and the children are screaming. The parents are, it's really, you can't even, it's just a few minutes of the hours that they had to suffer. And in some cases, the long days and the trauma that is still continuing. But in those videos, you see them in their most vulnerable condition. In some cases, their children were just murdered, and you see them right afterwards trying to explain to the little children that their sister was murdered. Anyway, those are the most difficult videos that for me, I can't even watch it. And what I shared with Professor Kotler is that this kind of abuse of families is something that is so devastating that I think it is not defined properly in international law and international criminal law. And I think that we're seeing a new crime against humanity, a crime that was not defined yet. And Professor Kotler immediately was very supportive. We just published yesterday, and I hope it will be sent in the chat, the definition of crimes against families, a call for the UN and for the international community to recognize crimes against families, as we term them, as genocide. And what Hamas did, what we argue that Hamas did, is that Hamas has weaponized the family unit and have demonstrated such an abuse that was targeted, was planned, and that constitutes a new crime against humanity that might inspire other crimes around the world. And now we're also documenting these crimes. And I'll pass it to you. I'll just say very briefly that the challenges are great in establishing this kind of archive. I personally didn't know what am I taking upon myself. It's one of the most complex things. It's the most complex thing that I ever done in my life. From the exposure to the traumatizing materials, to even the simplest task of hiring people to work with those materials. I'm thinking now that we are hiring people that we all knowingly enter and took upon ourselves to do this, to bear witness for the entire nation in many ways, in ways that I want to tell you that I don't think all of us should be exposed to this. I know that many of you want to bear witness, but it's really terror in its most cruel way. And it doesn't get easier, it just becomes harder. People ask me usually, is it better now? And no, it's worse. It's more difficult. Some of the materials are extremely difficult, and so that one of the challenges is again the trauma that is surrounding the work with those on these issues. The second thing is the fact that I spoke at the National Library Conference a few weeks ago, and I said that of all the documentation efforts, this is one of the most threatened one. The issue of crimes, the sexual abuse, and the crimes against women and children is one of the issues that serves as a strategic weakness for Hamas. So I'm targeted personally. The documentation project is targeted, and we're getting help, I want to say, from many, from the tech companies that are standing by our sides to provide us with infrastructure. Microsoft, I want to mention Microsoft, that have enabled us to do this work and to have secured systems for all the materials, to have storage place. Anyway, I can keep talking, and I'll end by saying that I think building this archive and working on these materials and making sure the world knows is one of our ways to contribute to fight the denial, and also to bring justice, because really justice begins with recognition, with believing to the victims, with believing us as a people to what happened here. And thank you so much. I'll end with that.
Thank you. We do have quite a few questions. So I'd like to begin with asking, how do you envision the archive being used, and for what purposes specifically?
And this is an excellent question. We are developing release policy for almost every object. As I said, because of privacy issues, we really have to make sure those the materials have proper protection, and only it wouldn't be open to the public. It would be, we are developing a release policy that will enable researchers around the world, investigators, prosecutors, and those who need to bear witness will be able to access the archive. And for us, and our mission is to build the archive in ways that it will be accessible for generations to come. And not only now, but for generations to come. Actually, one of the most difficult thoughts that I bear in my head is the fact that our grandchildren are going to be the ones that are going to be able to view the most materials. And it's for me, it's a very difficult thought to have. But for us, we want to, at the moment, it will be accessible for prosecution purposes and for research purposes mostly.
Thank you. Could you provide specific examples of the types of materials being included in the archive and how they're being collected?
Of course. So we have 6 fields of documentation. I can't elaborate on all of it. I'll just say we are conducting interviews, we collect videos, images. People now bring to us huge databases. At the beginning, we used to get, for instance, one video, one image that we collected very carefully, but now people are coming to deposit databases that they've collected. First response, there's journalists that were there. The hard mission would be to go through these materials and to find the relevant information for these the specific crimes against women and children. But and I didn't mention it, but I want to clarify that we are documenting all war crimes against women, children, and families, and not just the sexual abuse, which is important, but it's only a part of this brutal attack. And it is considered a special collection on women and children, and as I said, on families. So I started mentioning videos, images. We are collecting even international media coverage of these issues, the interviews, protocols of the parliament, interviews of victims from other resources. What else can I share with you? An interesting thing that we are now collecting is even art of specific art of the war crimes against women. As I said, I can't share everything, but this is some of the example of the materials that we're collecting.
Thank you. How do you deal with the traumatic effect of exposure to these materials?
Wow, excellent question. So I'll say personally, for already a few months now, I personally get therapy. Without it, I don't think I would have been able to carry this mission. I also we minimize my exposure. We try to develop methodologies of minimizing the exposure as much as possible. For instance, one methodology that we've developed is to limit the time of viewing the materials per day. It's very difficult, and we saw that a long exposure is deeply harmful. The other thing that we've developed is team viewing. We understood that when we are watching these materials together, it's much easier than sitting alone with the materials. So one of the methodologies we developed is to be together. Again, team viewing. What else can I share? We have now we are establishing a whole therapy for the entire commission, for all of the documentaries, and also the ones that are bringing their testimonies, that they will be able to access therapy as well. So yes.
Are you in touch with the USC Shoah Foundation that has been collecting the testimonies and has placed some of them online?
Yes, we've been in touch with them. I can't elaborate more, but we've been in touch with them, and we'll use the materials that they've uploaded. I wanna, but they have done an amazing work from the very beginning.
Thank
They
you.
were the first, among the first documenters like us that went out there and started. They collected testimonies very early.
I have another question about the archive. How do you see the findings and documentation from this initiative contributing to broader discussions and policy initiatives aimed at preventing similar tragedies in the future?
Excellent question. It's already doing that. As I said, we've been in touch with policymakers all around the world and actually building a network. I'll just give an example of this week. This week, I've been a part of establishing, I'll say MK Shelley Tal Meron has established a global coalition on war crimes against women. We've attended the first discussion, the first special session this week that engaged ministers around the world, ambassadors, human rights organizations around the world that have come to join this. It's just an initial, in its initial steps, but the goal of this coalition, as MK Shelley Tal Meron is leading, is to lead policy actions around the world. Other things that we're doing is partnering with other research institutes to release reports, to promote legislation in other countries in which victims will be able to prosecute, and be able to get some kind of compensation. For instance, in Canada.
Thank you. How have you found the reaction of the international MSM and press to your work? Many people, including the press, have shown extreme skepticism and hostility to Israel's claims. Oh, I'm sorry, the question just bounced. Should Israel not continuously kept releasing graphic videos of what happened to deal with this and counter the skepticism?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Yes, if I can locate the question again. Or you know what? We'll just move on to another one. Okay. What about the men? If they are attacked, this would influence their families too.
So, of course. I want to thank you for that question. We are also documenting sexual abuse against men. Unfortunately, we all also saw that. And in our documentation of familial abuse, we definitely refer to the entire family unit, the entire members of a family, men, women, and this, as I can say, as I said, it's one of the cruelest crimes we've seen.
How can those of us that are not activists help? And how can we change the mind of those that are expected to stand by us, but are not even acknowledging the existence of a terrible crime?
That's also an excellent question. I'll give you my strategy. From the beginning, once I understood that we are, that there is, we can't convince them that we are not, I'll say it differently. My strategy is to work with our moral allies, to find those who are who want to partner with us, who want to lead action, who want to lead prosecution processes around the world, who want to research that and expose the truth, who want to, for instance, there was a prominent feminist scholar here in Israel whom we've worked with, so she could refer to this, to what happened from her expertise, from her point of view, in ways that she will be able to expose these crimes. So I'll say that I admire those who can fight against evil like directly, and against those who are denying what happened in ways that are even anti-Semitic. But for us, or for me personally, the strategy is to work with those who are now want to take part in this fight, want to support, want to help. And because we're working with such difficult materials, for us, this is the best way to handle this. I want to ask you to be our ambassadors, to follow us on social media, to share the information. I have a WhatsApp group of people from all around the world, to which I share the kind of work that we're doing. Sometimes it's those leaders around the world that are standing by us, and then they are receiving a lot of criticisms. So what we're trying to do is to show support, to give them support once they are condemning the crimes or taking actions to be with us. So we sent this, and people all around the world have already joined and follow us on social media to expose what happened. If you have information, please share as well. Yes, that would be the most important. Be our ambassadors. Once we'll release more information, please share it as well.
I think we'll wrap up with one more question. Is there an
Yes.
opportunity to build and strengthen partnerships or alliances with women in the region who are focused on gender-based crimes?
Here in Israel, you mean, or in the region in the Middle East?
I'm not sure what the question, it wasn't specified, so maybe you could answer that both ways.
So I'll just share that I think one of the most important thing that I'm making myself available to meet feminist leaders, feminist activists around the world. We've just returned a few weeks ago from New York, from the CSW meeting at the UN. It's a huge meeting at the UN after the International Women's Day. It's a week where we made sure to meet a lot of leaders, to brief them, to make sure they stand with us, that they are able to also condemn the crimes and understand the truth of what happened here. And this is an ongoing fight. This is an ongoing fight. And I think establishing this archive, for me, it's the fact that we're going to have a strong basis to fight denial and to make sure this is not forgotten, these crimes are not denied, and also that humanity has lesson from it. These crimes against families, it's something that I think humanity needs to acknowledge them in ways that prevent them around the world, and to prevent such sexual abuse that we've seen here, which was not just sexual abuse, it was I'm sorry to end with that, but really we've seen the cruelest practices in ways that we have to try and make sure we develop effective measures to fight this, and make sure our daughters, our children will not suffer a similar future, and that we can promise them a different future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes our presentation from Dr. Kochav Elkiam Levy. Thank you so much. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you. To learn more about Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the mission of its American friends, please visit afhu.org. Thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you at future webinars.